I'm with a shop called Fresh Harvest. We have a location in Eureka Springs that we've had for 7 years, and we just opened a location in downtown Rogers. So thank you very much. Have any of you been to our store before? Yeah? A couple of faces look familiar. Awesome. Well, welcome. When a customer comes in, it's an immersive experience, and what we do is we let you taste everything in the store, but our greatest passion is to educate people. One of the things that Fresh Harvest was founded on is educating people to eat healthier foods and to make better choices with some of the products that we buy. And olive oil is becoming a staple in the United States, but it's only about until 5 or 6 years ago, did we have any domestic production that meant anything. So what happened is we had all of the olive oil was imported into the U.S. because we didn't have domestic production. As a result of that, there's really no FDA regulations on olive oil. There's no policing it because if we don't produce it here, how are we going to produce it? So we put the onus of policing the product on the countries. 60 Minutes did a really spectacular show a few years ago talking about the agro-mafia and how the products that are coming into the U.S. in regards to olive oil are adulterated. And what adulterated means, it's a really nice way of saying it's watered down. You're not getting what you think you're getting. They water it down. So in the case of olive oil, it's heavily, heavily adulterated. Do you guys remember Marlon Brando in The Godfather? Anybody remember what business they were in? Olive oil, that's right. So it's just kind of a sideline note, but it's like that today still. So when the American consumer goes out to your grocery store, and it's not the grocery store's fault, they're victims in it too. We estimate 85% of what's available in the store that says extra virgin olive oil is actually mostly canola oil with green food coloring in it. Now canola, and we're going to talk about fats a little bit in general. Just in general, we're going to talk about fats. Olive oil is a fat, butter is a fat, canola oil is a fat, vegetable oil is a fat. Canola oil, a lot of people don't know what canola oil is. So canola, there's no canola plant, all right? It's actually called the rapeseed, R-A-P-E, similar to rafe, R-A-F-E. It's a yellow flowering plant. It's a vegetable oil plant. It was toxic. It's related to the turnip family. And it's a cold weather plant. It loves the cold weather. And so in the 70s, the USDA said, hey, this canola oil has a really great fat profile. It's mostly monounsaturated fat. We should eat it. And Canada says, I don't think so, because it's poison. It's toxic. It's related to the turnip family. It's got these acid chains in it, and we shouldn't be eating it because it's not healthy. And so in 1974, 72 or 74, a Canadian scientist genetically modified those acids to an acceptable level in the rapeseed. And when they did that, we could start eating it now. And so canola stands for Canadian oil. And most people don't know that. So it's heavily processed. We're going to talk about processing too. And as far as canola goes, they process it with chemical extraction methods. And the chemicals that they use to process it are hexane, which is a petroleum product. So they literally dump this petroleum product on it, and it dissolves the oils and separates the oils out, and they burn it off. So from a health standpoint, you know, I don't need to make any recommendations. What I just told you is pretty self-explanatory on if you want to eat that or not. Olive oil has long been touted as a super good fat because it's all monounsaturated fat like canola oil. It's got very low saturated fat. So let's talk about fats really briefly. So you have saturated fats and you have non-saturated fats. We need fats to live on. We need fats to survive. Everyone is saying, hey, let's go keto, the keto diet, and we're just going to do all fats. Well, the fats that we choose to eat are very, very important. And saturated fat versus unsaturated. So we really want to go low on the saturated fats, in my opinion, and go high on the unsaturated fats. So we have monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. Those are the healthiest fats. Your body burns that like gas for a car. And so saturated fat, on the other hand, you have a USDA recommended allowance on how much saturated fat you should have. So what's high saturated fat? So butter. Butter's got a lot of saturated fat in it. Coconut oil. Everyone's eating coconut oil. Coconut oil has more saturated fat than lard. 5 times the amount of saturated fat than lard does. So I highly recommend you go very moderately on that. But let's talk about olives. And this is a harvest that my main supplier has done. And this is her husband's hand. I knew them back in California. I lived in California for many, many years. And that's where I met my main supplier and how I kind of got into the business. And you know, we see this harvest. It's really beautiful. You have mostly all green olives. These are the same olive. The colors represent different stages of ripeness. So we have the light greens here are just getting perfectly ripe, and then once they start turning that little tan color, and certain varieties will do different things, that's when you want to harvest them. So this is a beautiful, beautiful harvest right here. And so how is real extra virgin olive oil made? So we harvest and we crush as fast as we can. The industry standard for extra virgin is to crush to get a certain fatty acid content. Let me back up. So when I pick this olive off the tree, it's going to start producing free fatty acids, and they build up. That's decay. So I don't want the olives to sit there and decay. I can't truck them or ship them because they'll start to decay really fast. So I've got to crush them on site, and I've got to crush them really quickly. So the standard for the decay ratio is anything less than 1% of the free fatty acids. We actually harvest and crush within 6 hours. So our decay ratio is super low. So harvesting and crushing within 6 hours produces a super high quality oil from the fruit. And you can also cook in our olive oil as a result of that. Have you all ever heard that olive oil is delicate? It has a low smoke point. Have you heard that before or seen it in recipes? You know, that is a misunderstanding based on the adulteration that's been happening. So when I take canola oil and put green food coloring in it, I've got a low smoke point. If you get a freshly harvested olive oil that's crushed very quickly, you can almost deep fry in it. So when you got the oils we're going to taste today, they're strong, they're really stout. So, and so these olives are Arbequina olives. And that's exactly what we're going to taste today for the first time. And Leslie, if you want to start passing these out. So Leslie's going to pass out a sample and just kind of hold it and wait. And I want you to smell it, and then we'll taste together. So olives are a fruit. And so what most people attribute oil as being oily. Okay, so olives are a fruit. So what we're going to taste is a fruit juice, and I want you to think about it like that. So the hallmark of real extra virgin olive oil is that it's not oily. So with one taste, we're going to make this whole room of lovely people into olive oil snobs, because you guys are going to taste some real extra virgin olive oil. And most Americans have never had real unadulterated extra virgin olive oil. So I want you to smell it. It smells really fresh. This is an Arbequina, and I didn't explain what that was. Arbequina is a type of olive, like Granny Smith is a type of apple. All right? And so as a fruit, if you go to the grocery store, there's a lot of kinds of apples. So does anyone have a particular favorite apple?
Gala.
Granny Smith, Gala. Honey Crisp, that's mine too. So when you come into our store, we have 6 or 7 different varieties of olive oil. We have Frentoyo, we have Picual, we have Hoya Blanca, we have all kinds of different olive oils. This is an Arbequina. So we've smelled it first. It smells really fresh. If you smell an olive oil and it smells like a crayon, that is a sign of rancidity. And rancid olive oil won't make you sick, but it doesn't have any health benefits. So let's go ahead and taste this. It's going to be creamy and buttery. It's going to be a little grassy, but it won't be oily. Arbequina is grassy. So it's really light, isn't it? And it's not going to leave a film of oil on your tongue. So thank you. So Arbequina is a type of olive. And on our dispenser pots, they're called fustis that we have in our store. They're Italian pots that you fill olive oil with. You're going to see different cards, and you're going to see a lot of chemical testing here. And I welcome you to come up and take a look at it after the presentation's over. But we chemically test for a lot of different things. I want to know, first of all, I want to make sure that the olive oil is authentic, that it's not adulterated. But I also want to know how fresh it is. So when I test those free fatty acids I was talking about, I can see that too. The most important thing, at least to me, is the level of antioxidants. So olives have major antioxidants called biophenols. And the word biophenol, it's a nice, long, big word, it was created specifically to talk about the levels of antioxidants in olive oil. And yes, exactly. And biophenols fight cancer, stroke, heart disease. I have a nurse client at Mercy. She showed me a study that was just done on how biophenols is fighting Alzheimer's. And she calls it Mother Nature's antioxidants. And biophenols truly do an amazing job it's a major anti-inflammatory, and it helps our body fight off a lot of bad things. And our specialty in my store is high biophenol olive oil. And the reason that I do the high biophenol olive oil is because I'm a cancer survivor fighting a cancer, and I had very aggressive cancer. And I'm not saying this cured me. I'm not saying that at all, but what I am saying is that our motto, if you look on my business card, is let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And we really believe that in our store. So as a niche, I started carrying super high biophenol olive oil. And so I have a lot of people just, they don't even want to taste it. They just come in and say, give me that high biophenol olive oil. So Leslie, let's pass out the next olive oil, which is a blood orange. Do we have any questions on what we talked about so far?
So that one was plain that we just...
That was an extra virgin.
Okay,
correct.
No flavors, but now this will have what, a flavor?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So what Leslie's passing out is blood orange olive oil. And there's only one supplier in the world that I'm aware of that does what's called a fusion, or the Italians call it an agrumato, which is a fusion. And so my supplier, who I knew back in California, she has plantations in Tunisia, which is the tip of northern Africa, on the Mediterranean, about 50 miles from, nautical miles from Sicily. And she grows blood oranges and she grows olives. And she harvests them whole together, and she crushes them with the olives. So whole blood oranges crushed with whole olives.
Where did you say that was?
No, that's quite all right. If anyone has any questions, stop me. Tunisia.
Tunisia.
Yeah, tip of northern Africa. There's a lot of agriculture happening there. It's kind of, as I understand, it's maybe a little scary to go to, but I've never been there. But they do a lot of agriculture, and her family's had plantations there for many years. So we crush the blood oranges with the olives, and you get, imagine that sauteing chicken or fish. You could make a vinaigrette for salads. You could just do all kinds of things with that. You could add it to a smoothie. And why would I put oil in a smoothie? It's like, well, the oranges and olives are both fruits. So you're just putting the juice of the fruits back into it. So it's a beautiful flavor. It's light, it's delicate, and again, you're going to notice that you're not oily. So how is olive oil, let's step back a little bit, because I talked about the production of the blood orange olive oil. They're crushed together. So when I say crush, I'm not talking about this type of crush, this type of method. It's actually done, they're actually kind of minced up together, and then it's done in a centrifuge these days. So we do it in a centrifuge environment. And that's the same thing with the olives. So you can cook, you can saute, your imagination is the only limitation that you have on how to use the product. So Let's
These
do
first
Tuscan.
two that we tested, are they considered extra virgin or first press or what?
That's a really good question, and I told you I was going to get into that. So as she passes that out, you can taste that if you want, or you can hold off and I'll tell you about it. And there's a card that I have here, and you had asked about that, and I kind of bypassed over that. So I don't do anything on a script, so you got to keep me in line on that. Thank you. So how is olive oil crushed? And we talked about that a little bit. So the first, you've heard of first press, cold press, right? First press, cold press. So when those olives are picked, I said they're crushed fairly quickly, usually. Some suppliers will crush them and just let them sit for a few days so they can get more oil out of it. We press within 6 hours. But the cold press part of it is that the olives need to be cooled down. They're in a Mediterranean climate, so they need to be cooled down to anything under 80 degrees. The reason we do that is because when we start the crush, as I explained earlier, it's going to restrict the flow of it's going to restrict the juices to some degree. So when we do that first crush and they're under 80 degrees, it's going to just release the best of the fruit juice. All right? And that is how we get first press, cold press. In fact, in Europe, they don't call it extra virgin. Extra virgin is really an American term. It's coming on more and more. Rachel Ray invented the term EVOO, right? So it is coming on, but they would just call it cold press in Europe. But then it doesn't stop there, because we can continue to process that fruit and process that fruit. And so we're going to get the second pressing is virgin. And that doesn't have any heat restrictions. So we're going to crank up the heat a little bit and do it a little bit harder, crank up that centrifuge more. And then then we can do it again. We're going to get another pressing. So we're going to add chemicals, and we're going to add more heat. And chemical extrapolation varies with supplier. We don't do any of this. But have you guys ever seen the term light, extra light, and pure in the grocery stores? You know, and so how we extrapolate that is third, fourth, and fifth pressing. So we add chemicals, we add heat, we get more and more and more. And there's actually a 6 on here called pumice oil. So when all that's left is the pits, we can crush the pits and get oil out of the pits too. So imagine drinking lemonade with lemons that have been used 4 or 5 times already. So light, extra light, and pure. So now you know what that means. If you were to go to your grocery store and look for California olive oil, you would only find one kind, and that would be extra virgin. Only the European imports are going to be light, extra light, and pure. Now, pure sounds really good, because I heard they're putting canola oil in the olive oil, so I want some pure olive oil. It's kind of a misleading term, don't you think? I do too. In Italy, the 5th pressing they call lampante, or lamp oil. Seriously. So when you're buying light olive oil, you know, American mind, I mean, back before I knew, I would buy light olive oil because I'm watching my weight, you know, and I don't want to get the extra calories. And I'm not rich. I can't do the extra virgin. The extra virgin is really the food grade. That's what you really want. You're paying for the antioxidants, and if they were to tell the truth on imports, this would be what you would want to get. So to be a wise shopper at our local grocery stores, if I didn't have this and I was going to the grocery store to buy olive oil, I would probably buy California. And I would snub my nose up at Europe, considering that at least 85% of the imports are fake, adulterated, and misleading. So that's what I would do. Yeah. So it really matters what fat you use as well. So thank you for keeping me on track. What you have now is a Tuscan olive oil. It's a Tuscan blend. A Tuscan blend is a very popular blend for olive oil because it's got all of our favorite flavors: garlic, oregano, rosemary, basil, sun-dried tomato. And those are infused into olive oil. So how do we do that? I have people that come in the store all the time and they say, well, I'll infuse my own olive oil, so I'll just get the extra virgin Arbequina and I'll go get some herbs and I'll put it in there and I can do that myself. Olive oil is a natural antimicrobial, a natural antifungal, until you introduce moisture, water. And what is in fresh herbs or fresh garlic? It's a lot of water in there. So that will introduce a canvas for bacterial growth, salmonella. So if you do infuse your own olive oil, let's say you grow herbs in your garden, that's fine, just eat it up within 3 or 4 days and you'll be okay. But you would never want to take garlic cloves and pop them in there, set it in the back of the cupboard and let it stew. You would never want to do that. Right, so how do we infuse the olive oil? So we do use fresh herbs, but we do it in big stainless steel tanks under vacuum pressure for 6 or 7 hours. And then it's put back in that centrifuge, and it's processed again in the centrifuge to separate the oil and the water, any water residue that might be in there. So if I were going to do it at home, I would use dried herbs, totally dried herbs. But we do it for you, and I have about 35 different flavors of infusions. So we've got Tuscan herb, which is a blend of herbs. I've got garlic. We've got dill. We've got all just peppers and chilies and all kinds of fusions and infusions that you can use to notch up your cooking and make it easy. Let's back up a little bit more. I wanted, before we leave the olive oils and get to the balsamics, olive trees are pretty amazing. I actually brought some with me to Arkansas from California, and I thought I can make them live here, and they did. For the first year and a half, they did pretty good. We didn't have a hard freeze. Then we had a hard freeze, and they didn't make it. So they need to grow in a Mediterranean climate. But if we lived in a climate that was conducive to growing olive trees, they start out as a vine. Okay, so it's not like a tree, they're more like a vine. And biblically speaking, you hear stories about, or stories in ancient history about tending the groves, So you tend the olive trees. What they're doing is they're training those vines to become trees. And if you've ever seen an olive tree, they're all gnarled, and that's all the vines. Now, as a result of that symbiotic relationship that the olive vine has with humans who train them to be trees, olive trees can live for thousands of years. There's only a handful of trees on Earth that I'm aware of. The sequoias, back where I'm from, can do that. Olive trees, there's some pine trees that can do that. So they're really an amazing plant. And when you come into my store, there's a big mural on the back of the wall of the Temple of Concordia, which means family harmony. And it's on Sicily. It's not in Greece. It looks like a Greek temple, but it's on Sicily. And there's a famous olive tree by the Temple of Concordia, this beautiful gnarled tree. And we don't know how old that tree is. We can date the temple for the most part, but they're nearly the same age. So it's a really interesting visual. So when you add a tree that can live thousands of years, that produces a fruit that's all healthy fats, monounsaturated fats, what your body needs, and oh, by the way, it's filled, if you do it properly, it's filled with massive amounts of antioxidants. That's winner, winner, chicken dinner, right? And then I just started getting into olive leaf tea. And there's a plantation in Australia that grows the olive trees, and they harvest the leaves and they make tea out of them. And I've learned that the teas are antiviral. So the whole plant is just amazing, and it's all pesticide free. The leaves are so bitter that the bugs won't even eat them. If you were to when I lived in California, I pulled an olive off of a tree once and ate it. well, I took a bite. It's bitter. Oh, it's bitter. The flesh of the olive is super bitter. You have to brine them to be able to eat them. So, yes.
Is there anything in the Bible or biblical about using it medicinally? The olives, the olive tree?
You know,
I'm gonna,
there
that's
are-
off subject a little bit, but
It is,
there
it
a
is. I
historical
mean-
record, maybe I should put it that way.
I don't have any scriptures in the back of my head that I could say this and this, but I know that it's, you know, the dove bringing the olive branch, symbol of
Okay.
peace. There's just all kinds of symbols in there.
Let me rephrase it to historical record
Okay.
then. Is there anything in the historical record of how it was used, or if it was used medicinally? Do you know?
You know, I don't have any references per se, but I know that we've been,
If you look at the traditional medicine from Greek and Rome,
right.
which I just happen to know because I studied that, almost all of the medications were put into olive oil to administer. Now, whether the medicine was doing you any good or whether, because I mean it would be things like chicken dung, but the olive oil was probably
Right.
helping.
Okay.
And I was going to say something like that too. They've been using it as a carrier for a long time.
Oh,
Yeah. So the grade of olive oil that I have is called Ultra Premium. And Ultra Premium was a grade that my supplier back in California created. UP, Ultra Premium. And so, do you remember when I said we harvest and crush within 6 hours? That's one of the guidelines of the Ultra Premium grade. There's a whole litany of things that we do. She was sued by the North American Olive Oil Association because they said you can't be better than organic. And guess what? You can. And the judge threw out the lawsuit. If you do certain things. Organic speaks to pesticides for the most part. So it's going to say, does it have glyphosate on it? Is it sprayed with Roundup? Is it, you know, that's the big driving edge on organic. But there's a whole other litany of things. Organic does not guarantee authenticity. So you could have an adulterated, you could have olive oil that was certified organic, but it could still be adulterated, or it could be rancid. And a lot of rancid olive oil is sold in the US. I want you to go home and smell your olive oil, and then I want you to taste it with a spoon. And if you smell it, I want you to look for, does it smell like a crayon at all? If it does, that's a sign of rancidity. Or sometimes it'll be metallic. Does it smell metallic? And I want you to taste it. And if it's, you tasted our Arbequina, which is really fresh. If it tastes kind of flat or clayish, and if it's oily, then you know that it's probably adulterated. So,
How long should a bottle last in your cupboard?
so that's an awesome question. Thank you for asking that. When we talk about freshness of olive oil, we tend to describe it as from the crush date. So that's why we always post the crush date. The expiration date's really arbitrary. It's just a made-up date. 14 months from crush is our ultra premium guideline. So that means that's the nutritional shelf life. Now, because it was processed so well, if you go over that by a bit, it's not going to be rancid, but you're not going to have that nutritional value there. It starts to fall out. So I would say, yeah, 14 months. You want to store olive oil in a dark container. Air and light are enemies and will degrade it. So if you ever see olive oil sold in a clear plastic bottle, don't buy it. Yeah. So, any questions? Did we talk about smoke point? A little bit. So smoke point on these is 425. So you could literally Southern fried chicken in these olive oils. You could sear. I just did a recipe on my website for seared scallops. It was a Christmas Eve dinner recipe that I posted, and you can cook high heat meats. Of course, nutritionally, you're going to get the most benefit if you don't heat them up, but you can cook with them as well. So typically, I'll take the extra virgins and eat them more raw, make a vinaigrette or finish with them. And the flavored ones I'll tend to cook with a little bit more. Yes?
Do you lose any nutritional value when you infuse it and have to send it back into the process? Is there any nutritional value lost during that? Or is it just as nutritionally pure as the one that was just sent through?
Awesome. So are you talking about the infusion process?
Yeah, because I mean, I know garlic, that's a great, that's a good health benefit, but are you losing any of the olive oil health benefits by going through the infusion process?
No. And the reason why we're not is because we use cold methods to do it. So we don't heat the olive oil up or the herbs up. We use a vacuum extraction for the herbs.
Okay, because when you said vacuum, my mind just went to canning.
Can-
That's
oh,
just-
oh,
that's what
right,
I was
right, right.
thinking.
No, this
So I was
is
thinking if it's heated up, do you lose it? Okay, that explains it.
right. No, this is done with cold methods, all cold extraction methods. Yep.
Thank you.
Good question. Absolutely.
Do you use olive oil in any baking recipes?
Oh, gosh,
Christmas
you
cookies?
were asking the best questions. I love it. Absolutely. So the blood orange olive oil that we just had. Imagine making brownies, and instead of using that crappy old vegetable oil,
I just did
using
that.
blood orange olive oil. Did you make
I
it?
just did, no, I did it with crappy olive oil.
Oh, did
Canola oil,
Canola.
2/3 of a cup. I just
you?
did it
2/3 of a
yesterday.
cup. And now imagine if you would have used 2/3 of a cup
Of
of
that.
blood orange olive oil. You're getting antioxidants.
Yeah.
They will stay moist much longer. And what doesn't go better than orange and chocolate?
Not getting it.
So yes, you can absolutely bake. There are some things you can't do. I can't, but so some baking recipes need saturated fat, like butter. I'm going to cream the butter and the sugar together. You can't cream olive oil and sugar together. But you can make sugar cookies. They have, the texture's a little different. You can't make flaky pastries with it. But absolutely baking is phenomenal. And you could do the lemon olive oil with a lemon cake or a white cake, or just all kinds of wonderful things.
Are these on like, is it like freshmarket.com or Fresh Harvest?
Fresh Harvest. So my store, my business partner and I have 2 stores, one in Eureka that's been there for 7 years, and we just opened in downtown Rogers. Thrilled to be here, on the bricks between second and third.
But the recipes and things you're talking about, are they on the website?
They're all on the website, and there's flyers on the tables, and it has my website. It's freshharvest.co, because we couldn't afford the M when we started out. So freshharvest.co stands for company, and there's a lot of health and nutritional information there too, and there's about 250 recipes.
Wow.
Because that's really our passion. That's our driving passion. We have an epidemic of diabetes in this country. We have so many health epidemics, and a lot of it's caused by, there's nobody policing our foods. There should be no reason why you as an American consumer should go buy a bottle of Bertolli and get canola oil with green food coloring in it when it says extra virgin olive oil on the label. That's just wrong. And they lost a class action lawsuit last year. Did I mention that? Bertolli lost a class action lawsuit last year.
You did?
And because they're not selling, when they were tested, they were caught. And it was adulterated, and it wasn't from Italy. Italy's like this big in the market. And so Italian olive oil is a marketing scheme. The Italians keep a lot of their really good olive oil. Do they have good olive oil? Absolutely. And they guard it and they keep it. Spain exports a lot more olive oil than Italy does. But then you have other countries, and I didn't go into this, and so thank you for bringing this up. Because we've been trying to think that Italy's it, right? Well, you've got Portugal, you've got Turkey, you've got Spain, I've got Greece, I've got California. That's just the northern hemisphere. Let's turn this around and go down south. I've got Chile, I've got South Africa, I've got Australia, and they all make amazing olive oils. And that's actually the concept that I named our store after. Is if you go to my store right now, you're going to see Chilean olive oil and South African olive oil, because they harvested and crushed in May. That's their end of season. So July is their December, so to speak, weather-wise. So the whole notion that Italy's the only country that knows how to do olive oil is really just a marketing gimmick. I prefer the Chilean olive oil and the Australian olive oil almost over anything. So, and you want it fresh, definitely fresh. Well, let's switch gears and let's talk about balsamic. So that's the other half of the coin. Do you guys know what balsamic is? Okay, let's start there. It's a vinegar. It's a vinegar that is made with grapes. So we know vinegar, apple cider vinegar, well, that's made with apples. Apple cider, basically. Balsamic is a vinegar made from grapes. But wait, what about wine vinegar? Well, that's also made from grapes, but they're done differently. And we're going to get into that. Now, the Romans invented balsamic thousands of years ago. And it was for their elite, so to speak, because it's a laborious, labor-intensive process to do it. But why did they do it? To drink. Believe it or not, they would drink it. Have you guys ever heard of drinking apple cider vinegar or something? Apple cider vinegar with the mother.
Yeah.
What is the mother? the mother is the acetic acid chains that actually make the vinegar. And it's got a lot of health benefits. So what does vinegar do for you? Well, the acetic acid is good for your joints. So if I'm got arthritis or I worked out in the yard and I've got achy joints, the acetic acid helps break down the acid that builds up in your joints. So that's really good for you. My grandpa used to go to the refrigerator when he would get heartburn and drink pickle juice. He'd say, that's the Amish cure for heartburn. Because, back when we didn't have all the stuff we have now. We were lucky we didn't have Tums, I think. But pickle juice. So how does that work? So acid reflux or heartburn is basically not what we think it is. We think it's too much acids. It is actually not enough. You're not producing enough acid, so your system's kind of going. It's like the hiccups. You know what I mean? So it's not balanced. So when you put the acid of the vinegar on that, it helps balance it out. And so that's why it will hurt really bad right here when you first drink it if you're prone to that, but then it will balance it out. So they learned that because the Romans certainly didn't even have Tums. They had olive oil with chicken food, right? But there's a lot of health benefits, and what they didn't know is that there's a probiotic effect. When you age the grapes, there's a probiotic effect, and grapes are a fruit. Olives are a fruit. Guess what grapes have? They have phenols in them as well. And that's one of the reasons why doctors say we can now drink a glass of wine a day, and it's healthy for you. Because the phenols in the grapes are super antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, they're really good for you. So when you add all that up, balsamic is also like a health tonic in a lot of ways. And now it's been relegated to a salad dressing in the United States, right? I mean, that's what we do. But cooking with it is really, cooking with acids. Do you guys have recipes that call for vinegar? Right? And those vinegar recipes, they're usually like a salad or a slaw or this or that, but there's so many different things that you can do with vinegar. And in America, we tend to gravitate towards it needs sugar or salt, I mean, that's how I grew up. It needs salt and pepper, maybe, or some sugar. But what a lot of times what we really need is acidity. And in other cultures, like say the Caribbean culture, you'll squeeze a lemon or a lime or whatever. That acidity really helps round out the dish and tie the flavors together. And when you start using vinegar in sauces and different recipes, you're going to notice that you don't need as much salt. You don't need sodium because the vinegar taps on your salt receptors. So if I make a marinara or a bolognese, or in Louisiana, red gravy, right? That's what they call it. So if I make a red sauce, my grandmother used to put sugar in it, but if you put balsamic in it, you don't need to add salt or sugar. and it really ties it out. You guys will see when we taste it. So the Romans invented it over 2,000 years ago to drink, and balsamic, there's some debate about this, but my research into it has concluded that balsamic comes from the Latin word balm, healing balm. And so balsamic is health tonic.
Not embalmed.
Not embalmed. Not embalmed. There's some discussion that it comes from balsa wood because they use wood, but balsamic. Yep. So, Leslie, you want to come hand this out? So, how do we make balsamic, not embalmed? How do we make that? So, it's done in Italy, and it's a regional. I want you to wait to taste this until I explain it. You can smell it. It smells like vinegar. So it's done in Italy. It's a regional specific food. I remember I lived in Napa, near Napa, not in Napa, but near Napa, California, back when they were making champagne. This was years ago. And France got really mad because they said champagne comes from the valley, Champagne Valley. You cannot call your stuff champagne. And so now it's called sparkling wine. If you go to California, you can't get champagne, you can get sparkling wine. Balsamic's the same way. It's a regional specific food. It comes from the Reggio Emilia area of northern Italy, and the heart of that county or district, if you will, is Modena. And Modena is a town, you'll see Modena Balsamic. Modena Balsamic. Modena is literally this big, and it couldn't possibly make all the balsamic. So what happens is you get someone who gets a little Modena Balsamic, and they will adulterate it with wine vinegar. And then they'll say, well, it's got 2% or 1% Modena Balsamic, so I'm going to call it balsamic for Modena. And that's not true. So what we're about to taste is the real deal. And this is 18-year-old, barrel-aged. How it's made is consortiums make it, and it's all family done. And you got to be in with that family, or you're not going to get it. So the consortiums do it different ways. Our consortium uses Trebbiano grapes. The Trebbiano grapes are a common white grape in Italy. They are cut. The clusters are cut. They're thrown into big copper pots. I'm explaining how our consortium does it. Big copper pots, open wood flames. Now picture Lucy and Ethel. Okay, stirring that, because I do every time I tell this story. I picture that with little scars on, but yelling at each other. So we cook those grape clusters down, stems, seeds, all of it, skins. Cook it down into a must. It's called a must. Then we strain the seeds and the skins and the stems out of the must. And then the must is put into barrels. And different consortiums use different woods. To be a balsamic, it must go through very rigorous steps. Barrel aging, wood aging is one of those steps. So we use chestnut, oak, mulberry, and ash woods. And those woods lend their own characteristics to the grape must. So what happens is we fill the barrels up with grape must. We add 3% of a high quality wine vinegar is added to it. That 3% of vinegar with the mother turns all that into vinegar. So it's the winemaker's worst nightmare. If I was trying to make wine and I came along and put a drop of vinegar in there, it would ruin the whole barrel of wine. So that 3% of a high quality vinegar is added to it, and it turns all the grape must into vinegar. Every 2 to 3 years, we take some from the ash barrel and we put it with the chestnut, with the oak barrel, and we kind of marry and match, and that's called the Solera method. And the Solera method helps just create this blending of all the different woods and the grape must. And this is 97% grape must. So it's the highest level of grape must, other than you're going to pay like a lot more than what I charge to get 30 or 40 or 50-year-old. I've had 30, 40, 50-year-old, and I actually must say, the way that the consortium that my supplier works with, the way that they do it, I prefer this over a 30-year-old. It's just beautifully balanced. When you taste it, if you've ever had a port, it's like a tawny port. You're going to really taste the grapes, and it's going to be sweet and rich and complex. So go ahead and have a taste if you haven't already. I should have poured some for me. Maybe I'll just tip it home.
Does that have any alcohol content in it?
It does not.
It does not.
It does not have any alcohol content. So that's pretty crazy, huh?
Did you put that in a salad?
So you could definitely pour it over greens, make salad dressings. I can mix and match the oils together, which we might do. I brought one of these so we could try it. Maybe Leslie will help me. I could use that as a base for a barbecue sauce. I could drizzle it over Brussels sprouts. I could add it to canned tomatoes with some Tuscan olive oil and some garlic and who knows, and call it a day. And oh, it's going to be so good. Now, even though that was sweet, I bet that was much sweeter than you guys thought it would be. It fools your taste buds because that's only got 3 grams of sugar. It's low glycemic. The reason that it's so sweet is it's condensed. So that was about 2 calories that you had, filled with antioxidants and all that sweetness. That's a pretty good sweet level there. Low glycemic is really where it's at. Do you want to set these? Maybe set those up. I think I've got enough out. So let's do that because we have enough time. So let's make a vinaigrette. I went to an expo in Springdale called the Women's Living Expo, and they had chefs there, and they were giving presentations, quick little cooking presentations and things like that. And one was how to make a balsamic vinaigrette. And the chef, bless his heart, he had some pure olive oil. You guys remember that? And he didn't know. He didn't know. Had he known, I told him. I went up to him, and I think he thought I was crazy. You know, like one of those people, you know what I mean? He's like, I said, did you know that's lamp oil? And he's like, but anyways, bless his heart, he was working really hard. He had some salt, and he had some Dijon mustard and some other things and some herbs, and it was kind of a process to make a balsamic vinaigrette with him. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mix 2 things together, 50-50, and then we're going to call it a day. So vinaigrette is of course an oil and a vinegar mixed together. And I put on the drizzle spouts on this, which you can see it kind of breaks up the flow, but it's just going to take a little while longer, I guess. So vinaigrette's 50-50 with our products. With other products, you wouldn't do that. You'd use a lot less vinegar. So Tuscan olive oil is infused with garlic, rosemary, basil, oregano, sun-dried tomato. Now, our 18-year-old traditional balsamic, just going to add that to it, made from grapes. Now, what can I use a vinaigrette for? So let's back up a little bit. I can saute in those olive oils. I can finish with them. I can bake with them. I can do all kinds of things with them. The balsamics, I can make sauces. I could put my raspberry balsamic over ice cream. It's really good. I could make sauces and stews and soups. I could use our fig balsamic in some lamb stew.
A cocktail?
Now we're talking. Absolutely. So I just did for the Sips on the Bricks is a deal downtown where all the merchants serve little sips of cocktails, and we all make our own cocktail and we compete. and I did a cranberry pear Cosmo. So I used cranberry pear balsamic with some vodka, and it was darn good. We came in number 2. We did it.
I think that would beat these sweet, sugary drinks any day of the week, what you just described.
Yeah. You could also do, like, so say you're not a vodka person, you could do sparkling water. You could do iced tea. Now the vinegars don't go with an acidic, like we tried it in coffee. It didn't work. It was too much acidity. But with a nice light tea, you could put a little bit of our peach balsamic in that. Oh, it's really, really good. So 50-50. Now I have a nice viscosity. And so do you guys ever eat caprese salad?
What is it?
So caprese is tomatoes. You want to take over, Leslie? Thank you so much. Caprese is tomatoes and mozzarella and basil. And it's one of my favorite salads. It's just they layer the tomatoes and the cheese with basil. And so this is going to be like caprese salad in a cup. And you can imagine drizzling that over some fresh tomatoes with some cheese. This blend is our house vinaigrette. When you come into our store, we have a tasting bar, and we have 3 or 4 or 5 different concoctions that we've brewed together for sample purposes, and we're seasonal with it. I get seasonal products, like I have butternut squash seed oil and pumpkin seed oil. We get certain seasonal things. We just did a cinnamon pear balsamic with blood orange olive oil as a tasting. Oh, that was good. You can make mashed sweet potatoes with that one. Super good. I'm going to go, thanks to the holidays, I'm going to have to leave the potatoes behind and go back to the cauliflower again. And so I'm going to be putting butter olive oil in the cauliflower. Yeah, the butter olive oil. Thank you. We have a fan. I am too. So that's. Say what?
Popcorn and steak.
Popcorn
and steak. Cook it up.
Oh yeah.
I learned that from Steve.
From Steve, yes.
Yep. And then popcorn.
So what he's talking about popcorn is it makes the best popcorn ever. And we have samples of it in our store. And people are like, how do you get this butter popcorn? And it's butter. Okay, so let's back up. Our butter olive oil is not made with dairy. It's made with herbs. It's infused. There's no dairy, there's no saturated fat, and it tastes like butter.
Wow.
So I drizzle it over the popcorn and I toss it with salt. Or you can finish a grilled steak with it.
My daughter is allergic to dairy products. And when she was here visiting, she grabbed onto that, and now I'm buying gallons of it. When I get back to Chicago.
You know, that is a great point. If you're lactose intolerant, or there's that tick disease that's coming up too, and I'm meeting more and more of the people that can't do the mammal, the mammalian thing. I forgot what they call it. They can't do butter. They can't do red meats, butter. So this is a great alternative. And you're getting, for the butter olive oil, you're getting the monounsaturated fats, which is good fat, all the antioxidants. So.
Do you put it like in the bottom of the can and then put kernels in it and pop it in there too?
You can. You can do that. The secret to getting the really good buttery flavor is drizzling and tossing. Yeah. So what you guys are getting ready to taste here is our house vinaigrette. It's our traditional balsamic, which you had by itself, with our Tuscan olive oil, garlic, rosemary, basil, oregano, sun-dried tomato. And I just blended them 50-50. So, isn't that nice? Now imagine serving that on a salad, but I could also add it to ground turkey to make meatballs. I could add it to ground beef to make balsamic burgers. I could marinate steaks in it. I do a lot of grilling, so I love to do around with that. So you can just do a whole wide range of things with it.
Is this the one you had in the store that you put some bread in?
Yes. Bread dipping, for sure. Off my menu for a month or two, but definitely good.
I'm just kind of amazed at how well it's staying together. You have oil and vinegar. I've never seen it emulsify that good. Is that because of the quality?
It is because of the quality, absolutely. And if you were to go to the grocery store and get a she was talking about the emulsification and how beautifully, and it still stays together really good. That's the quality. So a vegetable oil is going to separate a lot faster, and that's just how it works. The real extra virgin olive oil is going to not absorb it, but it's going to just blend with it and stay with it better. Definitely. Now you could add a little dollop of mustard to that. You could play around and do a lot of things. I figured that we have about 1,887 different blends you can make at our store. But so it's just whatever flavor grabs you and that's how you go with it. Definitely. Yes?
I'm sorry, I missed the 3% of the balsamic, you made it, and then there's a 97% wine must. What's the 3% again?
Okay, sure. So 97% grape must,
Okay.
3% wine vinegar. So the 3% of the vinegar that we add to the grape must in the barrels, that 3% turns it all into vinegar. Turns all that grape must into vinegar.
Okay. Is that just a separate press or something, or is that like a mother, you know, when you make it?
So think of it like this. So once we cook down the grapes, Lucy and Ethel cook down the grapes, it's put into the barrels. We literally just pour the grape must into the barrel, but the wine vinegar into the barrel with it. And that when we introduce the vinegar to the grape must, it starts replicating
Okay.
the vinegar.
Kind of like that Amish friendship bread, you have a little starter. Is that analogous?
It's kind of like that. Yeah, that's a good analogy, I think. Most balsamics that you get aren't done this way. They basically they'll do it in reverse. So they'll take a little bit of our product, and then they'll add a lot of wine vinegar to it, and then try to thicken it and sweeten it back up.
And my second question is, when I go to the store and buy the cheap balsamic,
Yeah.
what have I bought? That kind.
You have bought, the most honest answer I could say
Go ahead, lay it on.
is we don't know, because if it's imported, there's no regulations on there, and they're lying on the label. So if Bertolli can sell his canola oil with green food coloring in it, we don't know. If it's imported, we don't know. I would say, by my experience, I would say what you're buying mostly is wine vinegar with high fructose corn syrup and maybe a little bit of our stuff in it.
Artificial flavor.
Yeah, even if it doesn't list it, you just can't trust. There's no policing on it. So, yeah, and I will tell you that what you are getting is you're not getting 97% grape must, for sure. Yeah. Great, you guys. Any other questions? All right. Well, I want to thank you all very much. And come see us. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 6.
It's a fun thing to bring guests, out-of-town guests, to go do, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
You don't eat.